Eric Cartman. When you give a 9-year-old kid the ego of a dictator and the moral compass of a broken slot machine, this manipulative little dude has done things that would get most people sent to prison for life. But because he's a cartoon character in Colorado, he just keeps getting away with it. What makes Cartman so terrifying is that he's not just evil for the sake of being evil. No, this kid is strategic. He'll spend weeks planning elaborate schemes to get revenge on someone who slightly inconvenienced him. Remember when he literally fed a kid his own parents in chili because of a petty dispute? Yeah, that's just a regular Tuesday for Cartman. But here's the twisted part about his character. Despite being an absolute monster, Cartman is also the funniest character in the show. His delusional confidence and complete lack of self-awareness make him comedy gold. He genuinely believes he's the victim in every situation, even when he's clearly the one causing all the problems. The kid also has this weird obsession with authority and becoming powerful. He's dressed up as Hitler, started a Christian rock band just to win a bet, and convinced an entire town that he could talk to the dead. And somehow people keep falling for his nonsense. Stan Marsh. Supposed to be the normal kid in South Park, which is like being the most sane person in an insane asylum. He's the straight man who has to deal with all the crazy stuff happening around him. And honestly, the poor kid deserves a medal for not having a complete mental breakdown. What's funny about Stan is that he's constantly trying to do the right thing, but the universe just keeps messing with him. He'll try to save the environment, stand up for what's right, or be a good person, and somehow it always backfires in the most ridiculous way possible. Stan also has this curse where he pukes every time he talks to Wendy, his on and off girlfriend. It's been going on for years, and it perfectly represents how awkward and uncomfortable he is with anything remotely emotional. The kid would rather face down Cartman's insane schemes than have a normal conversation about feelings. His relationship with his dad, Randy, is another whole thing. Stan constantly has to parent his own father because Randy acts more like a child than Stan does. It's like their roles are completely reversed, and Stan is the only one in his family with any common sense. Kyle Broflovski. Basically, the moral center of South Park, which means he spends most of his time arguing with Cartman and being right about everything while everyone ignores him. He's Jewish, he's got red hair, and he's got the worst luck when it comes to being listened to. The kid genuinely cares about people and tries to make the world a better place, which in South Park makes him either a hero or a complete idiot, depending on the episode. He'll go on these passionate rants about ethics and morality, and then Cartman will say something stupid and everyone forgets Kyle was even talking. His rivalry with Cartman is legendary. These two have been going at it for years, and it's honestly the most toxic friendship in television history. Kyle knows Cartman is a piece of garbage, Cartman knows Kyle is going to call him out, and yet they're still somehow friends. It's like watching two people who absolutely hate each other but can't stop hanging out. Kyle also has to deal with his overbearing mom, who's basically a Karen before Karens were even a thing. She's constantly trying to ban things and protect Kyle from the real world, which just makes his life harder. Poor kid can't catch a break at home or at school. Hey, by the way, I'm posting pretty consistently here, so it would mean a lot if you could subscribe to the channel and drop a like for the algorithm. Kenny McCormick, the poor kid who dies in almost every episode and then just shows up again the next day like nothing happened. Nobody questions it, nobody cares, and that's just how South Park works. When Kenny talks, it sounds like he's mumbling through his orange parka, and 90% of what he says is absolutely disgusting. The few times you can actually understand him, he's usually saying something so vulgar and inappropriate that it makes Cartman look like a saint. But here's what people forget about Kenny. Under all that poverty and constant death, the kid is actually really smart and surprisingly mature. He understands adult concepts way better than the other kids, probably because he's had to grow up fast being poor as heck. Kenny's family is so broke they can't afford food most days, and his parents are constantly fighting or getting high. It's actually pretty dark when you think about it, but the show plays it for laughs because that's South Park's whole thing. His alter ego. Mysterian is where Kenny actually gets to be a hero. He's genuinely trying to protect people and do good, but because he's a poor kid in a parka, nobody takes him seriously. It's kind of tragic, but also hilarious. Stotch. The most innocent, pure-hearted kid in South Park, which means he gets absolutely demolished by life on a regular basis. This kid has been through more trauma than a war veteran, and he still somehow maintains his optimistic attitude. Everyone takes advantage of Butters. Cartman uses him as a punching bag. His parents ground him for things he didn't do, and the universe just loves making his life miserable. And the worst part? Butters just accepts it because he's too nice to fight back. His parents are psychotic. They ground him for literally everything. They're extremely strict, and his dad has some serious repressed issues that he takes out on poor Butters. The kid once got grounded for getting a shuriken thrown at his eye, which he had zero control over. But when Butters finally snaps, it's beautiful. His villain persona, Professor Chaos, is his way of rebelling, even though his evil plans are hilariously harmless. He'll try to flood the world by leaving garden hoses running or block traffic with a tiny barricade. It's adorable and sad at the same time. Jimmy Valmer. The kid with crutches who's also somehow the funniest stand-up comedian in South Park. He's got a stutter, he's disabled, and he doesn't give a single care about what anyone thinks. That's powerful. What makes Jimmy great is that he's not defined by his disability. Yeah, he uses crutches and has a speech impediment, but that's just part of who he is. He's confident, he's talented, and he's not asking for anyone's pity. His comedy career is actually pretty impressive for a 4th grader. Jimmy performs at clubs, writes his own material, and genuinely works on his craft. He takes comedy seriously, which is more than you can say for most adult comedians. The show uses Jimmy to make fun of people who infantilize disabled people or treat them like they're fragile. Jimmy proves he can handle himself just fine, and anyone who underestimates him usually ends up looking stupid. Timmy Burch. Can only say his name and a handful of other words, but somehow he's still one of the most memorable characters in the entire show. That takes talent. The genius of Timmy is that he's just treated like a regular kid. He's not a charity case. He's not someone to pity. He's just Timmy. He hangs out with the other kids, he gets into trouble, and he lives his life. His friendship with Jimmy is interesting because they're both disabled, but in completely different ways. They're competitive with each other, they argue, and they have a normal friendship that isn't based on their disabilities. Timmy's parents are also disabled, and the show depicts them as a functional family that just happens to use wheelchairs. It's actually pretty progressive for a show that makes fun of everything. Wendy Testaburger, the smartest, most capable kid in South Park, and she has to watch dumbass boys ruin everything on a daily basis. If that doesn't build character, nothing will. She stands on and off girlfriend, but honestly, she deserves so much better. Wendy is out here trying to make actual change, fighting for causes she believes in, and being a leader, while Stan is just trying not to puke on her. What's great about Wendy is that she doesn't take nonsense from anyone. When Cartman makes her mad, she beats the living daylights out of him. When someone's being sexist or stupid, she calls them out. She's got more backbone than most of the adults in the show. The show sometimes uses Wendy to represent overly PC culture or performative activism, but even when they're making fun of her, you can tell she genuinely cares. She's not fake about her beliefs, even if she sometimes goes overboard. Craig Tucker, the kid who just doesn't care about anything. While everyone else is panicking or getting involved in drama, Craig is just sitting there flipping people off and wanting to be left alone. His whole personality is apathy mixed with deadpan sarcasm. Craig isn't mean like Cartman. He just genuinely doesn't care about most things. He'd rather be at home with his guinea pig stripe than dealing with whatever insane situation the town is going through. What makes Craig funny is his reactions to everything. While other characters are screaming and freaking out, Craig just has this blank expression like, "Are you serious right now?" He's the audience surrogate for anyone who's tired of everyone's nonsense. His relationship with Tweek is actually really sweet. Craig is this emotionless rock, and Tweek is an anxious mess, and somehow they balance each other out. It's probably the healthiest relationship in the entire show. Tweek. When you give a kid way too much coffee and a mountain of anxiety, this poor child is constantly on the verge of a nervous breakdown, and honestly, living in South Park, who can blame him? His parents run a coffee shop, and they've been giving him coffee since he was a toddler, which explains why Tweek is so jittery and paranoid all the time. The kid is legitimately tweaking out all day, every day, hence the name. Every single thing stresses Tweek out. Panic attack, gnomes stealing his underwear, full meltdown, existing in general. That's too much pressure. The kid is living in a constant state of fear, and it's both hilarious and kind of concerning. But despite being a nervous wreck, Tweek somehow manages to function. He's in a relationship with Craig, he goes to school, and he deals with all the crazy stuff in South Park. That takes some serious resilience, even if he's screaming the whole time. Token Black. The rich black kid in South Park, and yes, his name is literally Token because he's the token black character. The show is not subtle about this. What's interesting about Token is that he's constantly frustrated with everyone's casual racism and stupidity, but he's also kind of stuck dealing with it because he's the only black kid in town. He's like Kyle in that he's often the voice of reason that nobody listens to. Token's family is wealthy, successful, and functional, which makes them weird in South Park where most families are disasters. His parents are together, they have money, and they're relatively normal, which is rare. The show uses Token to call out racial stereotypes and liberal white guilt. Characters assume Token should know how to play bass, or that he relates to certain things just because he's black, and Token has to constantly explain that he's just a regular kid. Randy Marsh, Stan's dad, and he's basically a man-child who gets obsessed with whatever the current trend or controversy is. He's supposed to be an adult, but he acts more immature than the actual children. This man cannot handle anything in moderation. Whether it's getting into fights at Little League games, becoming a celebrity chef, or starting a weed farm, Randy goes all in to an absurd degree. He's incapable of just being normal about anything. Randy represents that specific type of adult who thinks they're way more important and special than they actually are. He'll insert himself into situations that have nothing to do with him and somehow make everything worse. His relationship with his family is a mess. Sharon is constantly disappointed in him, Stan is embarrassed by him, and Shelley just wants him to shut up. But Randy doesn't care because he's too busy chasing whatever stupid idea he has this week. The Tagridi Farms era turned Randy into basically the main character for a while, which says a lot about how chaotic and entertaining he is. When a side character dad becomes the focus, you know he's doing something right or very, very wrong. Mr. Garrison, the teacher who's had more identity crises than most people have birthdays. This man has been gay, straight, trans, a woman, a man again, and eventually the dang president of the United States. His teaching methods are questionable at best and completely insane at worst. He's used a hand puppet to teach, he's gone on rants about his personal life instead of teaching, and he's probably traumatized every student who's had him as a teacher. Garrison's sexuality and gender identity have been all over the place, and the show uses him to make commentary on LGBTQ issues, sometimes thoughtfully and sometimes offensively. It really depends on the episode. When he became president, it was the show's way of satirizing Trump, and it was both hilarious and uncomfortable to watch. Garrison himself was horrified that he won, and had no idea what to do with the power. Mr. Mackey, the school counselor with a giant balloon head who says McKay after every sentence, MK. He's supposed to help kids with their problems, but he's just as messed up as everyone else. His anti-drug messages are legendary, mostly because of how ineffective they are. He'll give these long speeches about why drugs are bad, McKay, and then the kids either ignore him or he ends up doing drugs himself. Mackey tries so hard to be a good counselor and authority figure, but he's constantly undermined by his own incompetence and the insanity around him. He means well, but good intentions don't mean much in South Park. The show has given him some surprisingly deep moments, though. His hoarding problem, his past trauma, and his genuine desire to help people show that there's more to him than just the funny voice and catchphrase. Chef, the school cafeteria cook who gave the kids advice about life and love, usually through song, he was basically the only adult in South Park who genuinely cared about the kids and gave them decent guidance. His character was all about soul music, romance, and being the cool adult who understood what kids were going through. When the boys had questions about relationships, they'd go to Chef because he'd actually explain things instead of being weird about it. Chef's songs were always hilariously inappropriate, but also somehow educational. He'd turn serious topics into smooth R and B jams, and it worked because Isaac Hayes' voice made everything sound amazing. The character was killed off after Isaac Hayes left the show due to disagreements about Scientology. They gave Chef one of the most brutal deaths in the show, which was their way of addressing how the situation went down. It was dark, it was petty, and it was very South Park. PC Principal showed up and immediately beat the living daylights out of Cartman, which honestly made him a hero in a lot of people's eyes. He's the embodiment of aggressive political correctness taken to an absurd extreme. This man is built like a linebacker and acts like one too. He doesn't just enforce PC culture, he threatens to physically assault anyone who steps out of line. It's satire of how some people approach social justice with the same aggression as toxic masculinity. PC Principal runs the school like a military operation. He's intense, he's intimidating, and he doesn't tolerate any microaggressions or problematic behavior. Of course, his definition of problematic is constantly shifting based on whatever the current discourse is. What makes him interesting is that, unlike other authority figures who are incompetent, PC Principal is actually effective at his job. The school runs better under his watch, even if his methods are completely insane. He's proof that sometimes the cure can be just as extreme as the disease. If you enjoyed this video, I'm going to be posting a lot here, so please subscribe, and thanks for watching.